So, back to the start. We're going to tell you the story of how we got our team at The Guardian to stop worrying and love discovery. Kind of. So they mostly love discovery now. We got there in the end, but getting there was a really long and grueling process. We're going to tell you about that. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Monica.
I'm a UX designer.
And I'm a product manager.
We're old friends who used to work together at MSN UK, and more recently, we both worked together at The Guardian, which is really lovely.
So some of you might have actually heard of The Guardian. We're mostly known for our quality journalism and our product innovation, but we're also known for a few other things.
And we're known for our digital products, so we have our responsive website, we have an app. Our digital department is quite widely known. We run some hack days that are known for being quite innovative, but actually not all is perfect at The Guardian.
Yeah, we have some real challenges around ways of working, so people working in silos, people not understanding one another's roles, and also people not really understanding a lot of the roles within the digital development department. So in previous quarters, most of the work that we did was based around kind of list of things to deliver. This was bad because we weren't really thinking about business impacts, we weren't thinking about our audience strategy, and we didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do things like discovery work. However, 6 months ago, The Guardian decided to bring in the OKR process, which was actually really great because we got to work as a small empowered team, and it really gave us the opportunity to try out things like design sprints.
So what did this mean for Monica and me? With all the restructuring and moving people into small empowered teams around objectives, we were put in charge of a small empowered team of 16 people of all disciplines. So there was people from editorial, there was product and UX, of course, there were designers, there were a whole lot of engineers. But this team, so we were all meant to be solving the problem of how to get less frequent visitors to form a Guardian reading habit. But no one had worked in a way before where they were familiar with product discovery, no one was familiar with the idea of testing and failing fast, and no one even really understood what UX was, so this was obviously very worrying for us. And particularly worrying because on the list of things that Monica and I both love is Marty Cagan and his book Inspired. We really like his methodologies for doing product discovery with a team. And we also loved the book Sprint that talks about design sprints at Google and how these are used to solve a problem in 5 days through prototyping and talking to users. So we really wanted to try these techniques at The Guardian, and we just hadn't been able to before because of the way things were set up. But now it was a time of change. We were meant to be working in this new way on these empowered teams, so we thought, let's try it. Let's try and do a discovery phase with our team. Let's try and actually find some solutions and validate them to solve the problem of getting people to form a Guardian reading habit rather than just arbitrarily choosing something to build and building it, which is the old way of doing things. And we got there in the end. We spent the whole first quarter that our team was together doing discovery. We ran 3 design sprints. We ended up coming up with great learnings at the end of our design sprints that we visualized in an opportunity tree that you can see here, and from there we designed a lot of live site tests.
So along the way, we created and tested around 50 prototypes, many of which we actually threw away, but some of which we actually took forward to turn into real-life products. You can see 2 of those here. So the first one is weekend reading. This is a roundup of content that you might have missed during the week that we send out to our users every Saturday. And the second is recommended for you, which serves up content recommendations based on individual user reading history. Both of these have been performing really well against our success metrics, so we feel like this has been a good process and we've kind of got something out of it. So, as we said, this wasn't an easy process. Our team's mostly in a good place now, and what we'd really like to do now is talk you through the 3 biggest challenges that we faced along the way and how we dealt with each of those. So, the first real challenge was really simply just getting everybody on side. As we said, this was a time of big change at The Guardian. It was a new way of working, and we were asking people to do a lot of new things, and this was pretty scary for people. So during our kickoff, my main tactic really was to try and sell this idea of self-empowerment. You know, we've got this new team and this problem to solve, and we can come up with all these great solutions together that we can test. We even suggested having a key result around testing 200 ideas. We thought this would get the team excited. You know, it'd be great. We can do all this discovery work and test all this stuff, except unfortunately, this kind of backfired on us.
Yeah, there was a lot of hostility when we suggested that, and we had to completely scrap it. We also had to get the team comfortable with the idea of UX, obviously user experience design and talking to users and prototyping. That was going to be a very important part of the discovery process for us. But traditionally, The Guardian kind of has a bit of a mistrust of UX sometimes. It's a very data-driven organization. People love data. We've always run a lot of A/B tests. We have a really great tool called OFAN, which has a lot of data on what our readers are looking at all times. So when you have this amazing data at your fingertips, when you see that a UX designer has talked to 6 users in the UX lab, you can't understand really the value of what you can get from talking to 6 users. The question that we always get is, well, I don't understand why I should listen to you when 6 people is such a small sample size. So I spent a lot of time just explaining my role and trying to build trust in UX. And the thing that I did that worked the best was dragging out this old study from the Nielsen-Norman group on why you only need to test a usability test with 5 users, because 5 users will spot 80% of problems. So this was the perfect thing for getting skeptical data lovers, skeptical engineers used to the idea of small sample sizes and to understand that there's a science behind why we do this, and it was a logical argument backed by data, and one of our engineers even went away after this and grabbed the whole study and shared it around, which was amazing. So the last thing that we had to get people on board with was the idea of design sprints. And this was also something that people were very skeptical of at The Guardian, because people saw design sprints as something where they were going to be pulled away from their work for the week and trapped in a room with some crazy UX person who's making them use all these Post-its and do all this crazy brainstorming, and nothing would ever come of the ideas. So convincing them was going to be a challenge, and the way that we did it was actually just by playing a trick on them. So we played a trick on them where we created a design sprint that didn't feel like a design sprint. And how did we do that? We simply got some users set up to come into the Guardian User Experience Lab on the following Thursday. We didn't block out any time in anyone's calendars. We didn't plan any facilitation. We just said, hey guys, we've got some users coming in on Thursday. For those of you who want to take part in prototyping, join us and you'll be able to have a say in the ideas that the team is working on. And for those of you who don't want to take part, that's fine. You can go ahead and get to work on improving our A/B testing tools, because we're going to need those later after we've done this work with talking to users. So after that, we actually had more takers than we thought we would for the prototyping, which was amazing, but it was actually probably too many people. But hey, so we kicked off on the Monday, and we were just basically winging it and running this sprint that didn't feel like a sprint. So this was the next big challenge, running these design sprints that didn't feel like design sprints. And we ended up running 3 of these sprints during our discovery, and the same challenges and worries from the team kept coming up again and again. So despite the resistance to participating initially, when we were actually doing the sprints, everyone wanted to be involved in prototyping and would be worried if they weren't involved enough. So that was a big one. We also had worries over how we were going to prototype everything, and also things like still some skepticism over the user sessions and whether the user sessions at the end of each sprint were going to be useful. So how did we deal with these worries in our 3 design sprints? The first biggest thing was for each of our design sprints, deciding what to prototype was going to be a challenge, because we had lots of pre-existing ideas floating around that people were really passionate about, and everyone wanted to see their idea prototyped. So we tried different things for deciding what to prototype. We tried voting, we tried grouping people's similar ideas together into one broad area to prototype and saying, hey, a lot of people are interested in this, so let's make a prototype to do with this. But we also went beyond that. So because we were at the big opportunities stage of a side of discovery, the prototypes for us were meant to be a learning tool. We wanted them to provoke discussion with our users that we were showing them to. So just learn a lot and throw them away. We weren't concerned with UI or usability or the design details at that stage. So it made sense for us to try and put more than one idea into a prototype, into a single prototype, so that we were learning more from each prototype. So what we ended up doing was creating these prototypes that were a bit like a Frankenstein's monster of prototypes, or not exactly, not that bad, but they were all a hodgepodge of more than one idea brought to life in a prototype that would be seamless for a user to try out in the lab. So a good example of this is, you can see that one in the top corner there. That is our schedule prototype. So what this prototype did was bring to life the idea of showing users what's coming up that day on The Guardian. It also brought to life the idea of letting someone explore what they may have missed yesterday to see if that was something that people were interested in. You can't see it there, but it also brought to life the idea of getting an email alert when an article that was coming up that you were interested in was published later that day. And it also brought the idea to life of choosing the delivery time of that email so that it arrived at a time that was convenient for you. So we had one prototype that was investigating 4 areas that we were really interested in. So we learned a lot more than we would have otherwise, but the good thing about using this with a large team who was new to discovery was that it meant that more people's ideas also made it into prototypes, so that people felt more included and invested as we were going along. So you're probably wondering how we actually made these prototypes when we had such a big team who all wanted to be involved. The biggest thing that actually allowed us to get them done was just simply panic. We had users coming in on Thursday, and we just simply had to get them done. Everyone just had to pitch in and use whatever prototyping methods they could. So we had people prototyping in code, we had people prototyping in Sketch and Marvel app. We had even someone creating prototypes in the Guardian's content management system. So we got it done, and the other good thing about the deadline was that people had no time to worry about how the prototypes looked too much. So that helped with that, because we wanted people to remember that they were throwaway. And we got it done, and actually that was the thing that Monica and I secretly cared about most at this stage. Obviously, we wanted the prototypes to turn out to be really good, and we wanted to learn a lot from them. But really, the main thing we wanted at this point was to just get the team used to the idea of the momentum of prototyping quickly, testing quickly, learning, and throwing the prototypes away. So as long as we had something by the deadline of Thursday to show our users, that was a massive win for us. But along the way, we did learn a lot about how you can get a good, clear prototype that you can learn from when you have so many people who want to be involved and who all want to be sketching and making the prototypes. And the biggest thing I'll say is make sure that you get the whole team to sit down together and sketch the prototype wireframe together before people go off and do their own thing and construct the prototype. And there was a really good technique that we used for this, a collaborative design technique called Design Studio. If you Google it, there are lots of different ways of doing it, but basically it involves a few different rounds of individual sketching, and after the individual sketching, people share their sketches and feedback, and it means that in subsequent sketches, people are getting inspired by other people's ideas, and they start incorporating other people's good ideas into their sketches. So by the end, when it comes time to sketch one final set of wireframes, everyone's feeling inspired by each other and is a lot happier, and it just becomes much easier to agree on that final set of wireframes. We also, and this sounds strange, found that erring on the side of more prototypes actually helped our prototypes get better. So it was really useful for each member of the team to have their own prototype to focus on so that they weren't interfering with each other. And if there was someone who wasn't so busy but still really wanted to be involved, and they had an idea for another prototype that wasn't part of the original plan, actually just let them make it and add it to the user session. So at first we were a bit apprehensive about this because we thought, oh no, we're going to overwhelm users by showing them too many things during our sessions. But as our sprints progressed, we got braver and we started prototyping more and more things, and to the point where at the end, users were sometimes seeing as many as 6 prototypes in a session. And it was completely fine. We still got really good, genuine reactions. No one seemed overwhelmed or confused. And again, we learned much more than we would have otherwise. And plus, the whole team got to be involved. Which brings me to how we got everyone over that skepticism that they were still feeling over the user sessions at the end of our sprints. And really, there is nothing that can replace just having a team that has been so invested in prototyping and is now seeing their prototypes being tried out with users in the UX lab at The Guardian for the first time. This was like a completely transformative experience for some people. We had an engineer who didn't really know what UX was when he met me, and after going through the prototyping and watching the users, he said that he thought this was the most valuable thing he'd experienced at The Guardian, which was amazing. There were another couple of things that helped us. One was getting the whole team involved in note-taking and analysis. So there's a really good note-taking technique for user sessions in the book Sprint, where everyone on the team writes notes on Post-its during the sessions and does the analysis together at the end. So that was great for getting everyone engaged and also for making the analysis go faster, which made my life easier. And then also just having a product manager who's really excited about the user sessions and who makes a point of wanting to be there to see each and every one. Yeah, that was incredible. So thanks, Monica.
Thanks, Andrea. So this brings us to our third and final challenge, and this was the live testing stage. So by this point, we'd pretty much validated quite a few of our concepts, and we were ready to kind of take those forward and turn them into tests on the live site. Unfortunately, there was more freaking out at this stage, so if you thought our team sounded worried during the first two stages, this was almost nothing compared to how worried they felt at this stage. It wasn't so much that the idea of live testing was alien to them, as Andrea mentioned. Everyone's very familiar with A/B tests, but we were really wanting to try out new things like demand tests, working with assumptions, working within success metrics, and all kinds of other things that people weren't really that familiar with. Another concern at this stage was that when we were designing these live tests, they had to look perfect. People were worried about putting things out to real live users that didn't look, really great. So we really had to emphasize that, we need to get things out there quickly, get some data back, learn something, and move forward. So to allay some of these fears and to kind of get live testing really quickly, we held this workshop to really think about assumptions and live tests. So the main aim of this was to get everybody to think of all the assumptions they had about each concept that we wanted to test, identify the key kind of assumption which would either prove or disprove that concept, and then to think of the quickest way to then test that particular assumption. We really put emphasis as well at this stage that these tests should be quick. We really wanted to think of ways to test things without code, get them out really quickly. So some people came up with ideas for using the Guardian CMS to test things, editorial curation, and kind of a bunch of other methods. Our team was also really keen to understand the impact of their work, which was really great. So for every test that we put out there was a really clear success metric laid out, and I made sure this was pinned up on our live test board. Ta-da! So this might just look like a bunch of Post-it notes, but actually this board was built in collaboration with our team. It clearly showed all the building blocks of how we'd got to the live testing stage, all the live tests that we were running, the assumptions we were testing, the success metrics, and all the other key information. And this really helped us to keep momentum, and it was also a great point of reference during our daily stand-ups. Despite everything we've been through,
It was not the end.
Oops. They're still worried sometimes. So it's been 2 quarters. We've made a lot of progress. The team's mostly on side now, but of course we still get some questions and concerns around some of the things that we've mentioned. But we're pretty much in a good place right now.
The biggest thing that has allowed us to be in a good place with our team right now and them being okay with discovery is just simply because they've been through the whole process now once. So they've been through the design sprints, they've been through the live testing, and when those phases were going on, they were really worried that there was no light at the end of the tunnel, that we were never actually going to deliver anything, and they were never going to have the chance to actually design and build something real. The testing just seemed like it was going on forever. And we got there in the end. We now have products that we're actually designing and building, that we're making real, so they can see that that has actually happened. And they have also been able to see, because these products that we are now making real have been showing good engagement, they understand the value of the discovery process that we went through to get to them. So there's a lot more trust in Monica and I now, and we're actually kicking off another discovery phase in a couple of weeks, and we think it's going to be a lot easier this time. And we actually have told them this time that it is going to be a design sprint, and they're okay with that.
And if all else fails, bribe your team with delicious food and fun activities. So the whole process takes time, but it's really, really worth it in the end.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
These are some resources that you guys should check out.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea and Monica.